Hi, I'm Talya Groves, and I attended Pace University's musical theater program from 2011 to 2015. So I knew that I wanted to perform my whole life. I grew up in Kansas City, and sort of the thing that all mothers kind of do with their daughters is put them in dance from a very young age. It's like a very Midwest thing to do. But it just so happens that I really had a talent for it, and that became apparent like very early. So I danced first, and that went on until I was like 10 or 11. And that's when we figured out that I could sing. My mom is a singer. And so I would start singing Spice Girls around the house or whatever. And it was like, oh, she's got a little voice on her. So we started nurturing that a little bit more. And I started auditioning for community theater, semi-professional theater in Kansas City. I was on track, singing, dancing, and I knew I wanted to, at the time I wanted to be a superstar, the next pop star. When I started high school, I got into choir. I did the musicals. I was on the dance team. And I always had positive feedback from a lot of the adults around me in my formative years. It was very special. I think in hindsight, I definitely was a token in some instances because I didn't grow up around a lot of Black people. I didn't grow up around a lot of people that looked like me. But as far as the arts were concerned, that aspect of me was always celebrated. Certainly there were a fair share of microaggressions, both in my normal life and in performing, but overall, the adults that surrounded me really nurtured my Blackness and thought it made me special. So that continued to happen. When I was 16, I got my first professional performing job. I started working at an amusement park in Kansas City. Actually ended up going home through college for the summers to continue working at that park. It was, a crucial experience for me. And I honestly think that had I not had that in the summers in between this time at Pace, I may not have stuck with it. Anyway, when I was in high school, I was performing, doing the musicals, working at that amusement park, and I couldn't really decide what the track was going to be for me because I knew I wanted to perform, but I'm sort of an attainable goals person, so it didn't feel right for me to make a plan to just leave Kansas City, go to LA, and sort of with no plan. So it actually was my vocal director at my high school music program who suggested, why don't you look at some of these colleges in New York? If you major in musical theater, you can sort of use the college experience to segue that move, make that big move to New York. Thought it was a great idea. So I auditioned for 2 colleges, Marymount Manhattan and Pace. My Marymount audition was first. And like I said, I was not necessarily totally a musical theater girl. I was more a pop singer, dancer, performer. So I had no idea how intense that college audition world was. I'm glad Marymount was first because it felt sort of like a practice round, and it sort of made me go, oh, okay, like people have coaches for this and like are here with their monologues ready. So Marymount was first and Pace was second. And walking into Pace, which I actually auditioned at the school, we came to New York. I was so nervous. I felt immediately comfortable. Amy Rogers, the head of the musical theater program, she spoke to us and our parents and just felt so human. And she was this powerful woman, which I consider myself a very powerful woman. So I sort of saw myself in her. And then her assistant looked like me. They had my same color skin. They were brown. So knowing that one of the students that worked most closely with Amy looked like me made me feel like, oh, wow, I'm going to be really embraced here. And so I had my audition, and in the audition, I remember Amy saying to me how marketable I would be, which at the time I took as a compliment, but in hindsight, it's definitely sort of a microaggression. But it became clear to me, I knew I had them, and I knew PACE is where I wanted to go. So when I got that call that I was accepted, it was thrilling. And there it was. I'm moving to New York. I'm going to go to college in New York, and I'm going to be on Broadway. I expected PACE to nurture me and my talents in the same way that I was used to being nurtured for my talents. I was so lucky to have so many people around me growing up sort of cheering on my dream. I never had the parents who were like, no, that's not a career. Like, everybody was fully on board. Like, yeah, go be a star. And not even just my blood relatives. I mean, definitely them, but also my educators. Like, I just had the most amazing experience from the time that I was very little until going to college, from my dance teachers when I was young, to my bosses at the theme park I worked at, to my teachers in the arts departments of my high school. Everybody was on board for this dream and for my gifts. And so I expected to come to PACE and have that in an even bigger way. I didn't think it was something I was going to have to fight for. I think I expected, particularly Amy Rogers, the head of the program, I think I expected her. I mean, she was accepting me into her program. So I expected that truly meant accepting me. I really thought that PACE aligned with how I saw Broadway or theater or performing working out for me professionally, because nothing about me is cookie cutter, right? I'm like not this white skinned brunette or blonde girl in a jewel toned dress. I'm, brown and like to sing Aretha, and I'm like a little bit, I'm like stripper chic in my style. And Amy talked a big game at that initial meeting with the parents, and we all sat there with our parents and listened to her. She talked a big game about how PACE was not about the cookie cutter, diversity, that word. But she was talking this big game, and her assistant was standing there right next to her with brown skin. So it was like, oh yeah, this is for me. I am gonna thrive here. And I really just felt like PACE was gonna help me just segue right into the professional world. So after seeing that Amy's assistant looked like me, as I said, I had always been nurtured by the educators around me. And I like being the favorite. I like being well-liked. I like being accepted. I think part of the reason that I was able to grow up Black in a mostly white community is because a lot of the adults around me loved and cherished me. The adults around me that were in charge of the arts. I always had that support system. And so Rad, Amy's assistant at the time, was going to be graduating. And I wanted the job. I wanted to be the next Rad. I wanted to be the assistant because it felt special, and it felt like I knew how seeing Rad made me feel. And I thought it would be so cool to be that person that people see at their PACE auditions to like help sell it to them. So the first experience I had with that was that the two people that wanted the job were me and my good friend Tatiana, who was the only other Black woman in our class at the time. And at the time, we were not allies. And it all started because we both wanted this job of Amy's. And I think it's interesting, we probably wanted it for a lot of the same reasons. And so that competition that I think Tati and I never felt competitive toward each other, but everyone around us, all the white people around us, even though Tatiana and I couldn't be more different. I feel like the competition between Tati and I was always, people always like to feed that fire. Which black girl's gonna sing down this week, or which black girl's gonna get assigned, I don't know, I hate the bus. Embarrassing, but the competition was fueled for 4 years, and it all started with those interviews to try and be Amy's assistant. And that's fine. 2 people wanted the job and only 1 person was gonna get it. But I think particularly when you're a white person dealing with 2 women of color vying for the same position, there's a way that you handle that with 2 18-year-olds to make sure that it's all good and to make sure that it doesn't create this competitive nature between 2 people that should be sisters. So that was the first experience that was a little suspect to me. I didn't get that job, and ultimately I'm so thankful. But of course my feelings were hurt, and there was never a conversation either about that. It just was sort of, Tati and I both had a couple interviews with Amy. We both had 1 interview with Rad. And then at the end of first semester, freshman year, Tati had gotten the job. But I also, based on another experience I had in the first couple months of school, I knew I wasn't gonna get the job. It got back to me that a student who was frequently in Amy's office, a white student, who was frequently in Amy's office, and they sort of had a pal relationship, they were pals. This student had a crush on me. And when she told Amy about it, 2 months into my freshman year at Pace, Amy's response, in front of other people, in front of other witnesses, Amy's response to that was, "Be careful, she's trouble," about me. And it's like, I've been here for 2 months and you accepted me into your program. So why am I trouble? Because I'm kind, I'm polite, what do you know about me? Why am I trouble? So hearing that she had said that about me, it was like, oh, okay, well, if I ever thought I was gonna get that assistant job before, clearly that's not how this is going. That whole first semester of college, it became very clear to me that this person didn't like me. At least that's how it felt. And that was a terrible feeling because that had never been my experience. And I certainly didn't expect it to be my experience. Not everybody's gonna like everybody, but I was 18 and had been in school for 3 months. So at the time, I wasn't thinking that it had anything to do with race. But in hindsight, that became very clear. You don't say someone's trouble when you barely know them. You don't say that for no reason. It's crazy that what she decided to say about me to another white student who I was trying to form a relationship with, the thing that she chose to say was that I'm trouble. And now knowing how many of my Black peers had that same descriptor applied to them, it's like very clear what trouble means. So another thing that happened my freshman year that in hindsight, I just internalized because it was such a microaggression, so inappropriate. I would try to stop by Amy's office every now and then. I think a lot of students did, trying to foster relationships with her. I was sort of like a thing that a lot of freshmen would do. So one of the times that I stopped by her office, I sat down and she was like, "So what's with the hair?" And at the time, I was wearing fake hair mostly. I should say that as a biracial woman growing up, my father was the Black parent and my mother was the white parent. And this was before the natural hair movement that's happening in America now. So that to say that my parents didn't really know what they were doing with my hair. So growing up, my hair was always a vulnerable point for me, because once I became a teenager, when all my little girlfriends were flat and ironing their white hair, and like it was very much a thing that they got to do, I didn't know what I was doing. So when I started working at the theme park that I worked at, I could use fake hair. And that was my first sort of journey into different options. So I was wearing a fall at the time, just like a fake ponytail attached to my real hair. And I would style it so that it was kind of blended. I'm not gonna lie, if you look at pictures, it was not the move, but I didn't know what the move was, and it was what felt best. So she asked me, "What's with the hair? Is it fake?" Obviously, it had judgment to it, or disgust maybe even. It was like she wasn't asking it in like a positive way. So it sort of took me aback, and I explained to her what it was. And her response was like, "We need to figure that out." I tried to describe it to her, but I was so taken aback and my feelings were hurt that I was like choking on my words and feeling dumb and ugly. And I just can't believe that I was put in a position by a white woman to not only have to hear her critique my black hair, but to have to explain myself about my black hair to her. At 18 years old, it's crazy. As I grew, as I met more black women, as my first professional experience outside of school was Motown the musical. So that, I got to finally have a lot of people who could teach me options and kind of teach me about it. But yeah, it was so hurtful to feel ugly, like because of my hair, because I had felt that growing up. And so this person who was supposed to be in charge of me now in one way or another, having her judge me about my hair was like very hurtful. So if I recall correctly, every year at PACE, we had a different form of evaluation. There were like freshman evals, which took place, I want to say we did something at the beginning of the year and then something at the end of the year to track our growth maybe. But sophomore year was our first experience with like true evaluations. And PACE is not a cut program. They don't cut students based on the rate at which they're growing. But evaluations were always set up to feel that way because, it's a panel of your educators, all white. You're performing material of your choice. Sophomore year, it's material of your choice. They just have to be contrasting two songs. I sang Take Me to Heaven from Sister Act and At Last by Etta James. And I felt so good about both because Sister Act was one of my first musicals where, it's heavily based in pop music. And sort of that was my hope. Like my niche in musical theater was going to be either these jukebox musicals with pop music or musicals written to sound like pop music. So Sister Act was a great choice for me, I thought. And then At Last is like old standby. I could do, backwards, frontwards. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to nail it. I get into you have a meeting after you do these evaluations where you get your feedback. So I get to that meeting, I'm sitting in front of Amy Rogers, and she kind of puts her hand on her head on the desk and says, I just don't know what to do with you. I don't really know where to place you. And the microaggression there, already I had other experiences prior to this that let me know that issue is at least slightly informed by my racial ambiguity. You know, the thing that's a phrase that was used a lot at Pace, racial ambiguity, as if that makes me qualified to represent races ambiguously. I'm not ambiguous. I can be placed. So yeah, that feedback was hurtful because it's almost like she was making that my problem. When really, as I mentioned, that's what I was paying her to place me. So saying that to me is offensive. And then now knowing that that's a phrase she used a lot with Black people. So there's a lot of people with the story of, I just don't know what to do with you. I don't know where you fit. And it's triggering because neither do we. We're young, either Black or biracial. We're probably already dealing with some of that, I don't know where I fit in our own personal lives. So then to have it doubled down on by our educator with the thing that we all hold dearest to us, are performing, just not good. Not good. Knowing that she said to more Black people than just me, I don't know what to do with you. I don't know where to place you. I now know that it's because I didn't fit into a stereotype that she was comfortable with. She genuinely didn't know where to place me because what she wanted to be able to do was very easily place me into whatever her stereotype of Blackness within the theater realm was supposed to be. And I didn't really fall into that. I'm not, wailing. I'm not doing anything that she would be able to be like, oh, that's what you're going to do, and here's all the material I'm going to give you for it. And so knowing that that's what she wanted to be able to do just sort of highlights that there was no individualized attention for Blackness at Pace. So you either were able to fit into what she thought Blackness was supposed to be. She either could place you, or she just didn't know where you fit in. And I guess that was supposed to be our problem, not hers. I internalized it, like, oh my God, I can't be placed. What am I gonna do? I'm a problem. Being made to feel like a problem. And I think all of us who are Black deal with that on some level from the world. So to really feel like her feedback was in alignment with that felt like so embarrassing, and it felt like I was wrong, when really it was her not doing her job. The end of sophomore year, second semester sophomore year, first semester junior year, everybody goes through Amy's class, and its specific objective is mainly to teach us how to act a song. So there's various weekly assignments, sometimes based on material she'll give us, sometimes based on material we choose for ourselves. One thing that sticks out to me as very inappropriate is that we were asked to keep a journal through the whole class that we would then turn into her each Wednesday, and she would keep it for the week and give it back to us. You don't really know if she read it, but the way that you're gonna find out if she read it is that more than likely she's gonna hit you with it when you're standing up in front of your class to try and manipulate a vulnerable reaction out of you, which every acting teacher, I guess, has their different tactics to get you there. But I think particularly with young, impressionable people who are being vulnerable with the closest thing we have to a parent around, because again, we are still very much children. We think we're grown. I thought I was grown, but I don't know, it just was not handled with care. So there was already that. But one of our assignments in her class was our role assignment, where we pick a role, any musical theater role, and we stick with that role for 4 weeks. And there's different assignments, and it's a deep dive, really cool assignment. And for me, it was like, this is my chance. I am gonna blow her out of the water. I'm gonna place myself in the way that she has said that she can't. So I was ready. I was like, here it goes. So I chose Aida. I've always loved that music. It's right in my vocal range. It's a Black woman. The show centers around a Black woman. I mean, it literally does not get any better than that. And it brings in the pop music aspect for me. Elton John wrote the music. So I was like, this is my moment. I'm so ready. So the week comes where we have to get up and do a song that character sings. So I did Easy as Life, which is a bit of a marathon of a song. I mean, it's long and you're singing. And even though it sort of stays in the same place vocally, it's a hard sing for me. But I did it well. And I was so excited to impress her with it. So I do the song, and it's sort of like the memory of it it's dramatic. I envision what I felt like afterward was like at the end of a performance when you're like, so I'm like in that moment. And this woman's response to me was, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never really liked this material. In fact, I left at intermission when I saw the show. So I don't really know how I'm going to be able to coach you on it. That was her response to me in front of my whole class when I had just given all that there was to give. And it's just so telling. It's like I handed you the opportunity to place me. And I chose me. It was personal to me. So not only are you just, again, not doing your job, but you're like getting a dig in about material that's personal to me because I chose it. I love it. And also, interesting to me that you're sharing with me, and then the microaggressions here are insane. You're sharing with me that at a Broadway show, you got up and left a Broadway show that centered around a Black woman. And people don't just be leaving Broadway shows. You're not just gonna leave a Broadway show, but the one that you chose to leave was the one starring a Black woman. So again, just another example of just never quite feeling like enough, aggressively being made to feel like I was wrong or bad or not enough. I thought that I had made a great decision about where to place myself. And even if her feedback would have been, this material isn't right for you, or I think there's something better for you, let's find it. She could have said anything, but like, how confusing to have been told, I don't know where you fit, I just don't know how to place you. And then when I place myself, being knocked about the choice. It's wild. You know, I would watch other people in Amy's class, and I would watch the spark that they would get out of her. And I always wanted that. Because at the time, it was our greatest source of feedback. You know, this is what we were investing our time and money into, is this experience. So I would see other people spark something in her and get awesome feedback, and the investment in me just wasn't there. And I don't know if it stopped at that moment in sophomore eval when she didn't know where to place me. I don't know when it stopped. I don't really know if there was ever any intention of having investment in me since I was trouble 2 months in. But it was just after that moment when I really thought, okay, this is going to be the one. That was the moment for me when it was like, oh, this woman is not going to see me and doesn't want to. I mean, it made me sad. And I think on a conscious level, it deflated me on a conscious level. But I think the way that I respond, the way that I respond to trauma, and this is a through line in my life, is that it's a motivator, luckily, but that doesn't happen immediately. And it also can be damaging in the sense that this is really the first time I've gone back and dug up the things that I internalized in my time at Pace, because I just keep it moving. But it was definitely in that moment with the Aida feedback where I was like, okay, it's not going to be a thing with you. And I took that on. I thought it was me, but I knew I had to keep it moving. So feeling unseen and unvalued by her and watching her see and value other students, white students, was painful. So another thing that happened junior year, once I never had I don't give a fuck energy with Amy. But as I said, after it became very evident that even with Aida, I couldn't get her, it was like the last trick in my book, you know? So, but something cool that happened during junior year in Amy's class was that for a certain section of time in the class, she would bring in Sherry Sanders, who wrote Rock the Audition. She focuses in rock, pops, music, and how it relates to theater, which obviously is a huge thing nowadays, not only with jukebox musicals, but with, you know, original musicals that are very much inspired by pop style music. So I knew that, first of all, I had followed Sherry's work. There was a little crush, definitely. Talent crush, fascination with the business, the empire she had built, and also an excitement to know that I was going to have a chance to really show what I was best at, pop music. So Sherry came to class, and as I had expected, I did well the first week, and the response was good, and it felt so good in the setting of Amy's class specifically to feel seen and heard. And Sherry at the time was doing her own show outside of school, where she was auditioning people to be guest artists in the show, to come, and she would sort of show the audience what she does in terms of adjusting people on pop music, and then we'd get to sing our pop cut. So it's like people helping people. Well, my new favorite person was doing a show. I'm auditioning for that show. And she chose me to be a part of her show. And I'm known to be a little reckless, a little wild, and I really go after what I want. So that night, I asked Sherry on a date. I did it in front of people. I didn't care. And I didn't really think anything of the fact that she was adjunct faculty, because it's like, okay, well, she's only going to be teaching at Pace for 3 more weeks. It might have been more than 3 more weeks, but she was only going to be teaching at Pace for a short amount of time. She was hired by Amy, not on faculty at Pace, a guest teacher. So that didn't feel weird to me. We're both adults, and you know, this student-teacher relations thing, I knew of it happening at Pace. It had happened before, and nobody really, it wasn't even a big deal. It was a known thing, that's something that has happened at Pace, could happen at Pace, and will continue to happen at Pace. So we're in the arts, it makes sense. It's not appropriate necessarily, but it makes sense. So I didn't think anything of it. Asked her on a date. We did start dating. When Amy found out about it, she let Sherry go. And this is twofold. On the one hand, I should mention that Sherry is an ex of Amy's. They were together for a long time. And that was common knowledge. But my feeling about that is, if you're going to bring an ex, if you're going to bring someone onto your staff that you have a personal history with, you're making the decision to put that personal history aside. So whatever rules or lack of rules that the rest of the faculty has, that person should be held to that same standard or non-standard. So it's interesting to me that the only faculty member who ever faced disciplinary action for relations with a student was Sherry, because I'm also the only Black woman student who has done that. The rest of the student-teacher relations that are common knowledge have been between white faculty members and white students. Why is it that white students and faculty, this happens with all the time, but when it happened with a woman of color, a student of color, you have to take disciplinary action on that faculty member? And again, not a permanent faculty member, was not a full-time teacher at Pace, was an outside professional that has a college program that she pops in with and pops out with. So I think it's just a testament to the fact that regardless of if it was because of their personal history or because of my race, conscious or unconscious, it speaks to the fact that there was no professionalism to the way things are enforced at Pace. Everybody has different rules, I guess. I think it's really unfortunate the way that Amy chose to handle the situation. While I can totally take accountability for the fact that maybe it was not appropriate, and I pursued it. I want to be very clear about that. Maybe it wasn't appropriate for me to pursue it. Maybe it wasn't appropriate for Sherry to consent. Maybe our relationship was not appropriate, but the way that it was handled was so different than the way it's been handled with any other student-faculty relation. And the way it was handled also robbed both myself and other students, particular students of color, as it relates to the school side of things with Sherry. Forget our personal relationship. On a teacher-student level, I was so excited to be seen and heard. And there are other Black students younger than me who could have benefited from having that same experience. And it was so painted, and I was still very young, so it was still painted, the way it was dealt with was still painted in a way that I had caused. Well, because I remember I went into Amy's office the Monday after Sherry told her. Sherry offered the information to Amy, like, look, Talya and I are seeing each other. So I went into her office on Monday. She asked me to close the door behind me, and I just kind of sat there. She didn't speak. She just really looked at me, and I said, okay, well, this is awkward. And she goes, yeah. And she's like, I don't really know what else to say, but obviously Sherry can't work here anymore. Like, as if it was direct punishment, like cause and effect. Like, I am the reason that Sherry will no longer work here. And it's like, no, you're making that decision, a decision that you haven't made with other faculty members. So again, being made to feel like a problem, and being made to feel like I've caused a problem for my peers. But I think because I felt like such a problem, because I felt like I deserved punishment for the bad thing I had done, I took it on as my wrongdoing. And I think that's another reason why I've not been able to process this trauma as clearly, because until the See Our Truth movement, I felt like the way Amy treated me was because I was trouble. If it really was grounds for terminating Sherry, then first of all, it needs to be grounds for terminating every other faculty member that's engaged in student-faculty relations, 1. 2, when you get down to it, right, wrong, or indifferent, you can't pick and choose who you're gonna enforce punishments with. And the way that Amy chose to handle the situation with Sherry reinforced this idea that I'm trouble, that I'm a problem. And so because I'm trouble and a problem, this thing is happening. And I should feel bad. And I did. I felt really bad. Not bad enough to end the relationship, but bad for the rest of my time at school. The relationship with Sherry, I think, really sealed the deal on Amy and I's relationship just never going to be a great one. And of course now she had even more leverage to put that on me. And so for the year and a half that I had left to be at Pace, it just sort of was like, don't be around each other. The rest of my experience with Amy from then on out was just non-existent. And I wrote her an apology letter before I graduated, totally feeding into the idea that I was bad or wrong. So interestingly enough, ever since I have had some professional success after graduation, Amy and I's relationship has improved. I'm useful to her now. It looks good to post on Facebook about Pace alum Talya Groves' accomplishments, whatever show it might be. And until recently, I gotta say, until I took the See Our Truths movement as an opportunity to reflect on my own experience, embarrassingly enough, I still cared so much. Like, it has thrilled me that since after graduation, she's taken an interest in me. It's that still, what she thought of me still held weight. And there are pictures of me, have been pictures of me in a role that I did at Pace, on pamphlets for the school, on the website. I think on the top floor of the Performing Arts Building, there's like a huge picture of me doing this role that I did at Pace. And it's just so interesting because while I definitely had opportunities at Pace given to me by either outside professionals or professionals within the school who did see me, Amy was not a part of that. She didn't see me. So it's interesting that in the aftermath, I'm put out there as one of the faces of diversity of Pace, which I'm sure for brown and Black students who are looking for a school to go to, the same way that Amy's brown assistant made me feel like I'd be seen and accepted, my face is out there making those Black and brown people who are looking at schools feel like they will be nourished and accepted at Pace. It's trickery. And it's a really hard, interesting, confusing thing to feel like I'm one of the faces of that trickery. Because that diversity that they're using me to show is not something that Amy invested in, or I think even knows how to invest in. It's interesting and confusing to now be celebrated by the person who refused to see me. The head of our program did not see or value me. So it just feeds into this whole confusing thing of like, I love the fact that I've now been chosen. I'm a chosen one. I'm celebrated. But celebrated by specifically a person who said I'm trouble, who didn't know where to place me, who made me feel bad or wrong or not enough. And granted, you can't make people feel, obviously those feelings existed inside of me, but that is part of navigating Blackness. And the lack of investment in me evoked all of those feelings. And so then in the aftermath of that experience, to have there now be an investment in me, it feels like it makes me feel crazy. Because if I don't feel good about that, then I'm ungrateful. If I'm not gracious about having a little respect on my name, then I'm crazy. But it's a mind fuck, because that just wasn't the situation. But A, it gets into how PACE measures success, and B, it's just offensive to have to play nice now, because now I'm useful. Now I'm worth being celebrated. It's crazy. I think one of the reasons that the See Our Truths movement is so important is on a broader scale, because while yes, this is going on at PACE, essentially advertisement of diversity without the nourishment of it, there are a lot of schools where there just isn't diversity. And then in the industry itself, there just isn't diversity. It's gotten better, but this is a through line, and it starts at these training programs. Like, interestingly enough, I've had pretty good experiences. I haven't had anything too crazy happen professionally with respect to my race, but the one bad experience I have had that I feel was racially motivated, because I feel that this person has a hyper focus on cast members of color, was an experience with a music director who is a good friend of Amy's, who Amy would talk about a lot as like a name drop thing, because, this person is working in the industry a lot. And my experience with that music director was not a good one, and has at least a tinge of something racial to it, because the common conversation amongst Black people who've worked with her is that feeling of a hyper focus on Black people and making them a problem. So it's just interesting, because it's just further proof that this issue does absolutely bleed into the professional world, the real world that the school's prepping us for. I coped with this treatment in a lot of different ways. I am an odd girl, but I have fine-tuned coping mechanisms. So I didn't, overdo it on drinking. I didn't do drugs. I didn't act recklessly in the traditional sense of the word. But I think I isolated. I think I felt shame because I felt wrong or bad, and I think I kept those things to myself. Luckily, I did go home during the summers to work at that theme park, so it sort of rejuvenated me. I think the relationship with Sherry had a bit of coping to it. I think I know myself well enough to know that it wasn't a conscious motivation in pursuing Sherry, but I certainly don't respond well to not being seen or heard. It's pretty much like, you're gonna see or hear me. And I think if I'm really looking at myself with a critical eye, there was a little bit of pursuing Sherry that happened in spite of she and Amy's romantic history. It is not something that I was conscious of, but it's pretty clear to me that had some coping to it. Luckily, I had great friends. My graduating class in particular, I'm sure they said or did some problematic things along the way, as that's how being white works. I mean, there just is less of a consciousness until there is a consciousness. And any of my white peers in my graduating class especially, if they ever would have said or done anything problematic, it would have been corrected. I didn't, unlike some of my peers, I luckily didn't experience racism directly from my classmates. So yeah, I think I coped by making sure I stuck closely to the faculty members who did see and support me, and finding other opportunities outside of PACE to shine. I wouldn't understand the microaggressions that have happened my whole life due to Blackness or being biracial. I wouldn't understand that as well if I hadn't have had so much of it at PACE. And if it's such a through line and a common denominator for the Black students at PACE, that this movement in particular has made me go, oh, I wasn't crazy. There was a problem going on there. There is a problem going on there. I was wearing a shield a lot of the time. My guard was up. And I think the treatment there has certainly impacted my trust, both in people and in institutions. My trust that things are going to be the same way that they're presented, because PACE was not presented in the way it ended up being. It was presented as, I thought it was going to be amazing. And I feel like I was tricked. I want Amy to know that she does not get to take credit for anything about me, and that I feel sad for her about that, because she had the opportunity to really make a difference in my life. In fact, I paid her to do that, and she didn't do that. So I want her to know that I don't accredit her with anything great about me, but that I wish it could have been different. I wish that it was different, but I think that's it. She doesn't get to be proud of me. You hurt me. You made me feel like I wasn't enough. You made me feel like a problem. You accepted me and invited me into your program only to disregard, disrespect, and belittle me. And I'm great. I'm great. And you missed out on truly having anything to do with that. It's been such a cool time to process. I mean, it's not a cool time to have trauma, and it's not a cool time to have experienced racism, but the world is changing. I'm as much as it's really easy to see the problems, and it has been, like, we've been knowing that people are problematic. It is such a cool time to be processing collectively as a Black community, to be processing trauma and healing and taking action and initiative. But it's such a cool time personally to develop a better understanding of what my Blackness means to me, and to take a look at ways that I've allowed people and institutions to treat me Because I don't consider myself, I've never been self-loathing about my Blackness. It is my favorite thing about myself. It's beautiful. So I've never been this person who on my own feels wrong or bad or a problem because I'm Black. But looking at the ways that I've internalized society doing that to me, or people like Amy Rogers, and then realizing how that's affected what I will tolerate, it's so cool to realize that I don't have to do that. I do not have to tolerate. I don't have to tolerate it. I get to be empowered. And I think sometimes it's scary because I hate feeling mad. I hate feeling sad. But ultimately, it's not either. Ultimately, it's empowerment and it's exciting. I think things are changing. And for me, looking back at my PACE experience and realizing it's not the only time in my life that I've overlooked or just coped with awful behavior from people. It's growing me to look at it. I mean, and another way that I have coped is through therapy. I found a Black therapist, woman, so there are certain things I just don't have to explain to her. She just gets it by living, we have a shared experience. And I've paid her a lot of money to undo some of the things that Amy did. Also, one thing that's made it easier for me to heal from the experience I had at PACE, the more negative experiences, is that in essence, I won. I have gone on after college to do what I said I was going to do, to continue to follow my dreams. And that just has to do with sort of my trauma responses and how I function, and also some privileges that I have. I am lighter skinned, so I do have privilege. I get a seat at tables automatically that darker skinned people have a harder time getting a seat at. But I know that for me, I'm coming from the perspective of winning. So my situation in hindsight is easier and clearer than I know that of some of my peers. One of the ways that I cope, and this is in general in my life, is this whole video for me. I'm not, I haven't necessarily gotten super emotional. I've maybe felt it, but I'm just a person who often turns my feelings into theories or ideas or logic that I can process. I've had my cries. Certainly I've had my cries. I've had my vulnerability about it, but I have, one of my defense mechanisms is just to turn things into logic. And so it's very logical to me. This is what happened to me. It's wrong. And that's why I'm speaking out.